justice for all.
So I think the reason for this meeting is to update us on the current situations and maybe hear from our department heads.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is start off is maybe have the fire chief come up
Sure.
and talk a little bit about the
DOC.
EOC.
Good evening. I just wanted to provide the residents just a quick overview of the last day. So on March 18th, approximately 10 in the morning, we made the decision to activate our town's EOC. And the Emergency Operations Center will be open 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. First, I'd really like to thank the group behind me for the rest of the town departments for helping get this implemented in such a quick time. Some of the members of the community may not know or may not be familiar with the town's EOC, and I just want to take a second just to kind of give them a brief outline of kind of what it's set up for. So the EOCs can be activated during natural or man-made disasters, disease breakouts, or other public health emergencies. And here in Goffstown, we have 3 different levels. We have level 1, 2, and 3. And right now, the EOC is at a level 1. We're kind of monitoring the situation, gathering information, and trying to send that information out to the town through the town's website. So right now, I'd like to just remind people to go to the town website, make sure they're looking at the 211, and they can call the state for information, monitor the New Hampshire Health and Human Services website, as well as the CDC website on the coronavirus. And again, just a few tips that they can do, wash your hands, use the hand sanitizer, use that social distancing with folks. And then one final comment I'd like to make, as we're responding to emergency calls, as much information as people could give the 911 operators would really help us best help them in their emergency, so they can provide them their symptoms ahead of time. That way we can be prepared on our arrival. So if the board has questions about the EOC, I'd be happy to answer them, or if you have any.
Chief, I think maybe for the benefit of people who are watching, I assume there's probably a lot of people watching
Yeah.
since they can't be here in person, that the EOC is the Emergency Operations Center.
It is the Emergency Operations Center.
Which is stood up by the Emergency Management Director, which in the case of town of Goffstown is you as the fire
It
chief.
is,
right?
yes,
So
you
just
are.
so that people who are watching
Yeah, no,
understand how that process
Yeah,
works.
great point. Yeah, so I do act as the town's emergency management director, and I was the one that did activate that yesterday. And our emergency operations center is located at the Church Street Fire Station.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Any questions? Anything else to pass on? Any announcements that you want to make?
No
I
new
know you
announcements
covered
yet.
it,
We'll
but-
be certainly keeping everyone informed, again, through the town's website. All of our pages are linked together now, and anything we're trying to send out on social media as well to keep everyone up to date with the latest information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go around to all the department heads just to come up and give a brief description of what they're doing. Diane?
Thanks. I did bring a handout because I had to update the Library Board of Trustees today as well, so you're getting exactly what they received. Ooh, I'm top here.
Top dog, Diane.
Danielle, take this chair when you come up here, okay?
Calls.
Thanks very much for having us tonight. So I saw you on Monday, and we had closed the library on Monday. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we opened to the public for just 10 hours, just so they could pick up materials. As of Wednesday morning, we're not receiving materials from other libraries. So the collection we have in our building is the collection that the public will access from now until whenever. The staff is still working their normal hours. We will modify the time in the building next week. We won't work Saturday. We won't work nights probably because there's not really a reason for that. Every day I'm posting an update on the website so that the folks know what's going on. It's been pretty important. We have a lot of worried school kids out there, so we're getting a lot of phone calls from them. As far as the items that we've checked out 1,400 items in between Tuesday and today. So that's a lot of physical items, 1,400. That includes that automatic renewing that I told you about on Monday. So things are automatically being renewed, and that means that people aren't getting charged overdue fines or anything like that. Our book bundles are pretty popular. We're doing a lot of groupings of books for families. They're coming to pick up 10 books at a time, 5 books at a time. They're just desperate for reading materials, and we're happy to send those out. We've done 25 bundles so far. We did hold 2 live story times on YouTube. I don't know if you had a chance to watch them. I guarantee if you watch them, you'll be dancing in your seat. They're a lot of fun. Our 2 preschool story times had 435 views. We're pretty excited about that. It equals about 64.7 hours of viewing, and lots of those families have multiple kids, so you figure this is more people than we can fit in our building at once. So we're pretty happy about that.
Diane, can I just, and those ones are still just being live streamed? They can't, you can't record them?
We left the first 2 up about 24 hours because of copyright restrictions, even though we're in a situation of fair use right now, which means we can read anything online, we can't archive them. So the first 2 should be gone by now from our YouTube channel. And today, our teen assistant put up a teen book talk. That one can stay because she's not reading from the book, so you can check that one out. On Overdrive is one of our digital platforms. So far in March, we can't narrow it down to just 2 or 3 days. 554 items were checked out, digital items. And for February, our total number of checkouts was 878. So you can see that people are using our digital offerings. Universal Class is an online learning resource that had 232 lessons viewed, and in February, the total was 262. So people are definitely going to our online resources. Creative Bug is our art and craft video classes. It's something new that we just offered, and that had 25 sessions so far in March. February had a total of 23, so you can see where we're going. I also added some online comments for you so you can see what people are telling us on our Facebook page. I think the fact that people are looking to us to bring normalcy to their kids and to their families is very important. They're connecting through YouTube with the librarians they know. They come every week to story time, and they're seeing Miss Patty. I have one of my grandkids is 7, and I picked him up on Tuesday, and he said, "Nona, is she in there?" I said, "What do you mean? Is Miss Patty in the library?" So we had this little, he thought he could talk to her on the TV and stuff, so it was pretty exciting for him to see her. So just my final note, we don't consider the public library an emergency service. We're not the police, we're not the fire department. But we're vital. We're vital to our community. And I think that's what this shows, how vital we are. So that's all I have to say today. Thanks so much.
Okay, and if they want to watch it, it's www.youtube.com/Goffstown Library.
That's it. Next week, 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Kelly?
I did watch Miss Patty's YouTube live stream,
Yeah.
and she is a gift, truly. That
Yes.
was amazing. I do have a question, though, on the
Yes.
hours impact to staff. So if you're switching to Saturday and nights, how does that impact the overall staff hours?
They'll work the same number of hours. When they work a Saturday, they take a day off during the week. So now they're just working a Monday through Friday schedule. That's all. We're getting a lot of tasks done that have not been done for a while, so they're keeping busy, taking things off the shelf, cleaning shelves, things like that.
So if I understand it right, they can check out books, but they can't bring them back?
Well, we're asking for them to keep them at home. Yeah.
So how long before you run out of books? A long time, or?
Well, it'll be a while.
Yeah.
But you figure that, we only have one bestseller of the latest James Patterson book, so once that's gone. So we're doing the best we can. We opened up Hoopla, which means Hoopla is another platform that offers simultaneous usage. So that means that everyone at this table could read the same book at the same time. And so we removed our dollar restriction, so the whole catalog is available for the public. So I think there's plenty out there electronically, and it's just going to be tough, you know, if it depends how long this goes on.
Sure.
So, just like everything else.
Anybody got any questions?
No, I just want to thank you, Diane. I think it's a great thing. You're doing a great service.
Thank you.
Anytime we can bring some relief to parents and their families in these weird times,
Exactly.
it helps bring some normalcy to their lives. So you're doing great work.
Certainly
Thank
does.
you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll share that with my staff.
Sure.
Thank you.
Rick? Parks and Rec Director.
Sit in the tall chair, Rick.
Thank you. As far as Parks and Rec, I guess we're not quite as savvy with the electronical world. So we are venturing in to that world now. I looked into GTV, and GTV is kind of shut down right now. We can't get in there. So we too are figuring out how to use the YouTube mecca. And we have reached out to our lacrosse coaches, and what we're going to do is create skills drills, things that you can do for that age group and that program, and kind of mainstream that. Our program supervisor, Aaron, is going to manage that and kind of get that platform off and running. We still are trying to find a way to do our awards for the basketball season, the end of the season. Granted, we didn't get to finish the season, but we still do individual awards. And I think we'll probably take that same platform, the YouTube platform, and try and get that out there to give a little light in our situation. Other things we're looking at is there a way to wear a GoPro and take a walk down the rail trail? I do have to say, yesterday, the number of folks out walking on the rail trail is really amazing. And just seeing the number of people, even in my own neighborhood, I take the dogs for a walk, and seeing more people out walking and getting outside. And I think that's my message to everybody is try and find some time to get outside, with your family and get some exercise, whether it's a nice simple walk, whatever. But other than that, as far as the rest of our duties, the weather's been fabulous. Our ground supervisors jumping on getting all the fields going, getting them aerated, getting them seeded. This is a good time for us to do some repairs of the very worn spots in some of these fields, and that's what he's doing. Kind of basically works solo or with myself, the two of us. So that's what we've been doing.
And how much time are you spending down at the new fields, keep seeing what's going on down there?
Yeah, our Eric does a lot of the oversight, and I might be there once a week, that kind of thing. But Eric is right on top of all that. I mean, he's really doing a lot with that. But I'm down there probably once a week. So that's coming along.
Progress,
That's
looks
coming. Yeah, that's, man, because the winter has been so poor as a winter, they've really moved right along, and they're going to be finishing pretty darn soon. So, and there's going to probably be a little gap between when we put our irrigation in, because they finished almost kind of ahead of schedule. So, and things are going pretty good. We did have little overages here and there. We found some stones, big stones. So little things like that, but we've been managing that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody got any
So,
questions?
Rick, I was down at the transfer station. I overlooked down there. It looked like they were laying a lot of under drain, I assume. I saw
Yeah,
that,
that's
right?
what they're
all
doing
under
right
drain?
now, is they're putting the field drainage system in place. And pretty much once that's done, now they're gonna be ready to put that moisture retention layer in, and then put the final soil in, so.
Yeah, and as the board's rep on Parks and Rec, Eric has offered to give me a tour next
Yeah.
week of what the current progress, so looking forward to
And
that.
the irrigation pond that is holding its own, and it's hopefully, knock on wood, it all works.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Adam?
Good evening. TPW is in reduced manning operations right now, so we're trying our best to support critical services only. So we're, facility itself, the office and the garage are closed to the public. We're taking any permit, construction services, that sort of thing by appointment. I'm triaging calls and website requests as we need to. The prime focus right now for us is solid waste and recycling removal, making sure that folks still have a place for all this stuff to go, and then getting that out of town with our long haul treks to Charlestown, Mass, and their Auburn facility for the next couple days, just because they're having some work done in Charlestown, and then Bethlehem for our trash to the landfill there. Something that came up in the EOC meeting today was whether or not, how long is that sustainable at those facilities in case they have, we're beholden to their schedules there. So I've asked Casella, and they don't foresee any shutdowns short of this maintenance work here this week. But in the event that we did, there was some discussion today about reaching out to Waste Management just to make sure that if the Bethlehem facility were to shut down or have a reduced capacity in the short term, we could maybe go to Rochester at the turnkey site. So we'll be looking into that tomorrow. Let's see. So curbside is the big crux this morning. Of course, we had a winter event, so I guess winter's not quite there yet, even though we're in spring, I guess officially in a couple hours, right? So we did come in for that treatment. The Scalehouse transfer station are open for public. Prime goal is there is to support the curbside trucks, so as they come in a couple times a day to drop off as they make the rounds around town. They get full, they come back, we have to have the ability to pack the trailers, which then get shuffled and reconnected to the tractor trailer and hauled out of town. So we need the support there, but also there's plenty of commercial vendors that are hauling for apartment complexes and others that don't have a curbside pickup. So we need to support that as well. And we had talked at the last meeting about the hours of transfer station, but I guess I wanted to spell that out clearly. We kind of put out some info and then realized it's midstream, a Saturday closure this first week, maybe good to give folks a heads up. So we've re-announced that they're going to be open on Saturday at the transfer station, but the goal going forward would be Monday through Friday to support both our curbside trucks and the commercial hauls. But what we're trying to not do right now is incentivize folks to come out with all their spring yard cleanups and stuff that everybody wants to do. I think our goal at this point ought to be to tell them to keep that stuff on site, and when things are a little bit less dicey, they can make that run. But
And what's the reason for that?
mainly social distancing. We're the guidance we're all receiving right now is that if you don't have to leave your house, don't leave your house. So bringing brush to the transfer station, I don't see as a critical item that we want to be encouraging folks
Well,
to be
there are
doing
some
right
people
now.
that bring their trash there on the weekends also, on Saturday, and that's the only time they can. So I still think we need to have a discussion on whether we need to really close the transfer station on a Saturday, which directly affects a lot of the taxpayers. I know you talked about the commercial traffic that can come in during the week. When we close the transfer station on a Saturday, it's always an issue. And I'm not sure that there's that much social contact when I go through there. And so I would want to revisit that. Maybe we'll do that a little bit later during this meeting.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to get an update right now on.
Yep. Let's see. So otherwise, we've got had a burial this week. Cemetery, we keep up on burials as needed as we can. Weather supports right now. The dig safe permits don't stop coming in, so as we're participating, so we mark those all as utilities whenever they have work. Today, myself and the assistant director, after the EOC meeting, toured all the Goffstown Village Water Precinct facilities, because we kind of realized that might be a point in the future that may be good to have a few more people in town that know how to operate that system if need be. Especially now that the Village Precinct maintenance staff has taken on the Grassmere Precinct as well. So we got a tour of their well pump setup, their mapping system, and then up on the mountain at the treatment plant up by the reservoir. So that was pretty good. We got some good notes that we'll give to the EMD to keep under lock and key, but good information to have, and the more people that know that can be trusted, the better. I think that's the key points for us. As Rick mentioned, we got the field construction, of course. We're also supporting the one other construction project that's ongoing, the bridge, Henry Road Bridge project. Concrete was placed, I believe Tuesday that was. right now, we're in the cure period for concrete, so once that sets, we can get the bridge down, the seats, and hopefully get an updated schedule for the summer, but it's looking better that we may not even have a traffic closure at all on Henry Bridge Road, so ready to put that out publicly, I guess. Here we are.
We'll
So
see.
that'd be some good news to come out of all this.
We'll see. Don't put it out publicly, the TV's on,
No
right?
tape delay, right? Yeah, no, this is the time to put it out. Here we are. So that's news to everybody in the room, right? I think that's the big takeaways for us at the moment. Oh, the crushing contractor is scheduled to come in here in the next few days. So we can get started on our pile. That's down pretty low based on the field project consuming quite a bit of gravel.
Sure. Anybody got questions?
Adam, with regard to the landfills, Bethlehem in our case, has there been any guidance come out, or best management practice or anything as to how they operate in light of the threat as far as more frequent cover? Because that's got to be a vector for that virus to spread.
I would certainly think so. There's a conference call. NRRA is hosting a conference call, I believe at noon tomorrow. I'll check my email. It came in, I think, earlier. I anticipate that to be one of the subjects, as we're kind of like the client, I guess, when it comes to that end. So I'm not sure how close we get to it, but certainly for the folks that operate it. And if we ever had any situation where we have a temporary, area, we would certainly need to comply with any kind of daily cover requirements, but don't foresee that in the short run, but
So there's conversations going on.
it is.
Somebody's radar.
It is, yeah. And certainly as the number of landfills shrink too, that more and more critical that they do it right.
Yeah, they went for a larger piece and they didn't get it there, so. Anybody else got any questions? Kelly? Mark?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Police chief?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, just first like to say thank you to all our town employees who have been working very hard in this pandemic. It's been quite the last couple of weeks. So a little update from the police department. Friday of last week, we basically put out an internal memo just telling our officers to be aware of their surroundings, the social distancing, making sure that they're wearing PPE or protective gear when they're out dealing with people who are suspected of having symptoms of COVID-19. We also suspended anybody from coming into our building that's not part of our building, so we have different groups that use it for a meeting space. So we put that out to those entities first before we put it out public. We suspended a few of our fingerprinting, a few of the ride-alongs, courtesy rides, and some sponsored events. We had a few sponsored events we were going to do to help the community, and we told them that we didn't really want them to all come together on our behalf. So, but then on Tuesday, as this kind of unfolded, we've kind of enacted what we call as phase 2 in the building. We are now in the phase where our officers are not responding in person to non-emergency calls. So how that works is we still have plenty of officers out there serving the great community, but we've dedicated one officer inside the building to man the phones. So when someone calls into dispatch to say, I have a report of a harassment call or a bad check call, instead of sending the officer to that person's house to have that physical contact, they just direct that person to the in-house officer, and that officer takes that call right over the phone. If there's something they can do to investigate that via the phone, they will. If they need to go to another location in person, they will. But essentially, we're asking the public to call us before they come to the station, and also understand that we're not going to send the officers to their home for small, non-emergency calls. That's kind of where we're at now. We've also suspended our response to medical calls as well. The fire chief has asked us not to go unless he's asking for us, because we usually do go to those calls to assist, but in the current event, we're really not going to do that. There's a few small other things that we've been looking at and changing, where our officers are trying to utilize, if they have to arrest somebody, they're going to summons them if they can, rather than physically arresting them. Obviously, if we have to physically arrest somebody, we will. But that's pretty much where we're at as far as internally. I'd like to mention that the governor had, put out an executive order telling everybody that owns businesses that serve meals to only do takeout only and or drive-through. I'm asking everybody, the business owners in town, that they kind of, help us out with that and just make sure that they're abiding by that. We're trying to keep the social distancing in effect. So if you're out there and you have a patio space, please make sure that people aren't eating out there or consuming out there. Really just come in, grab your food, and leave. So that's where we're at with the police department.
Okay, I just want to, anybody got any questions for the police? The three of us went to a meeting with the county. Maybe we could just bring the board up the snuff on that a little bit. We met with the county about possibly purchasing a piece of property next to the police department. I thought it went pretty well. We haven't heard anything back yet from them, have we?
No, we haven't. That was probably about 2 weeks ago now, and they said they would take it under consideration, the county commissioners, and so I can follow up with the county administrator to see. Again, a lot's happened since that meeting.
It's probably not one of their priorities right now, but still,
Yeah.
I mean, we did get a chance to meet and talk with them, and I thought it went pretty well.
I think the one hurdle that we'll need to overcome is the way the law is written is the county needs to put everything out to bid when it goes to sale or transfer of property. However, the county attorney that was there advising said they're able to limit it in scope a bit into a particular use. There was I guess a glimmer of hope there.
Sure. Similar to like it had to go to a public entity or, and there's not a lot of other public entities besides us that would be interested in that little piece of property. But we did do that, so.
It went well.
Yep. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Derek, you want to bring us up to snuff on Town Hall?
Sure. Yesterday, here at Town Hall, we went down to restricted use where it was by appointment only. The only offices that were open for walk-ins were the town clerk, motor vehicles, and the tax collector's office. Late yesterday afternoon, made the decision to close today, moving forward until the situation changes. So right now, Town Hall is closed to the public. What we have done is we've created a drop box system in the rear vestibule. I think most of you probably walked by it, where we have all the paper applications for building, zoning, life safety, as well as the town clerks. And we have envelopes out there where people can leave a check, and we're checking that periodically throughout the day. The offices are still here, being manned. Town clerk is driving everyone to the website for online renewals. And the state has made some adjustment in new plates, extending new plates out to April. The 20-day plates have been extended out to April 30th. And then we're working with state DMV on how we'll deal with those transfers that take place, not at a dealership, but those transfers in ownership between two private parties. So we're working on that and how we're going to handle that still. The offices here worked on their online applications, and so we got most of that up on the website today, and we're trying to improve those to go to a fillable form so people can submit those easier. Our building inspector is working with the fire inspection officer so we can continue doing new construction inspections so that does not get held up, as well as commercial inspections. Everything else we're going to do on a case-by-case basis and work with the fire inspection officer that rather than going into someone's home when they're there, potentially having that home vacated, and then get the proper PPE so the building inspector and fire inspector can go in. We're also exploring having, if somebody's doing sonotubes, taking pictures and that kind of thing. So trying not to stop operations. On the finance side, we've accelerated looking into some of our citizen self-service with Munis. So we can see that was kind of a project that we've been working on to get property and sewer bills online. So we're going to try and see if they have the implementers to accelerate that a bit so we can try and get that service up and running. Again, that's a pretty lengthy, involved one, but because so many other town halls have shut down, their implementers are finding some time, so we're trying to take advantage of that and get some other services up online.
Could you just cover meetings?
Oh, yes, thank you. We also notified that basically non-statutory board meetings, Budget Committee, again, is a statutory one, but we can get the expense reports out to them and wait maybe a month or two before they meet. Really, the only boards that should be meeting at this time would be the Select Board, and then also we look at our land use boards, Planning Board and Zoning Board of Adjustment. Today, the Planning Office pulled together all the pending applications to see what we have with statutory deadlines, and right now, the Planning Board is scheduled to meet next Thursday. We'll be consulting with the applicants to see if the applicants still want to move forward with those, to see what remains for them to get approval. If there's too many outstanding items and it doesn't look like it, we're going to be talking with them, and then we'll be consulting with the Planning Board and Zoning Board Chair to see how they want to handle that and what the best advice that we're getting from the state, because right now CDC is saying no groups no more than 10, whereas the state has limited it to 50. So that's really changing on a day-by-day basis, but we will have an answer on Planning Board early next week. And then our IT department has just started giving us solutions for video conferencing and telephone conferencing. So we're also seeing what some other towns are doing to make those public meetings accessible from whether it's phone or computer for not only the board members but members of the public. So we understand that those development applications want to continue to move forward, so we're balancing that and not trying to hold them up while at the same time make sure we've got the social distancing and keeping everybody safe. So
I noticed the chair of the planning board is here. Barbara, did you have any questions or input?
Yeah, I have some questions and input, but I also have questions and input as a member of the public. Are you having public comment?
Yes, we will. I just wanted to go through all the updates on the,
Derek has been in touch with me in regards to.
okay, we'll do that in a few minutes then. It's just, I wanted to get all the virus stuff up to date and what we were doing with that. So, okay, anybody got any questions? No? So the three boards that have to, well, technically should be meeting there, ZBA, planning, and,
You.
pardon me?
in the Select Board.
Us, yes, us. There should be one more, though, that shouldn't, the
Budget.
Budget Committee.
Budget Committee, but they can put that off. We've done that before. We didn't have
Yes.
any business, so we didn't really.
Their responsibility right now is to track appropriations and expenditures. So we are still providing that information to them, and we'll work with the members to make sure that they're getting, if they need the printed material or if they can do it electronically. Putting it off by, a few weeks or I don't think is as critical right now. Planning Board and Zoning Board, because applications have been submitted and some have been accepted by the Planning Board as complete, those start time clocks that we have to meet.
Now, how about if they need input from conservation? How's that working? Or are we,
We've got one problem with that.
We do have a problem with that. Conservation at this point has canceled their meeting next week based on what we felt was best for that. So we're going to look at if there's a way that we can get them to provide that comment, even if it's a limited presentation where board members are video conferencing in under the emergency procedures of the right to know law. And really just doing minimal comment. So we're still looking at that.
okay, thank you. Anybody got questions? Seeing none? Okay. Move on. Public comment. Barbara, did you want to make some public comment?
Yeah, thank you. Barbara Griffin. Thank you for listening to me. I want to thank Derek for the notice that went out today. I thought it was very well written. But I am a little confused as to the status of what's going on in town, and I hope that everything is being treated the same. And I know that this has happened incredibly quickly. I think it was just last week, maybe we had an election, or 2 weeks ago, and we're in a whole different world now. So I appreciate the need to respond quickly, but for example, I don't understand why GTV is shut down. You just heard one of your department chairs talk about how they could use that medium. That I have never seen more than 10 people in that studio in my life, and I have been there on many occasions. I don't know why it's shut down. That can be scheduled, and it usually is scheduled by appointment. There is usually always control over who's in and out of that facility. And it seems to me that would be something the town would want to be looking into.
Well, I can tell you, just to update you a little bit, there are some extenuating circumstances as far as that department right now, so that
Okay.
it makes it very difficult to operate.
All right, I
Would that be
mean,
an accurate statement, Derek?
Well, I think I made the recommendation on Monday night that GTV is going to be the information hub for the town and the school district, and I think you saw that on the emergency meeting on
Right.
Sunday afternoon, that they're really the information hub to get that information out to our residents. And I was concerned about the potential exposure with really one full-time employee and one part-time or one, I guess, half-time employee, and then two other that work a minimal amount of hours, under 10 hours. I was really concerned about their exposure, and if they were to be exposed to COVID-19 and be quarantined for 2 weeks, we may lose that information hub. So what we did is we changed the service model to people would have to submit content digitally, and we've open up those avenues where they can get that content to GTV, but they wouldn't be able to film it in the studio. So that was a recommendation I made on Monday night.
But they could still, if they wanted to set it up themselves and get it to the studio, or send it to the studio, they could run the,
Absolutely.
right.
Yes.
well, I'm not sure I understood that from the comments that I heard, so I hope everybody understands that, because I think that's,
Well, yeah, I think Rick would be the first one to say that he's not,
that's why you have.
computer savvy, maybe? How did you put it, Rick?
Let me clarify that, all right? Not that savvy in that field. When I say, I speak very kind of whatever. When I say shut down, okay, that's exactly what Derek said, so now we gotta find another means, YouTube, and that's what we're doing, to get that to them.
Right.
So,
Thank
sorry
you.
for any confusion.
All
Thanks.
right. My other comment is, it sounds like there are different things happening in different departments here, and I don't quite understand why. I heard that employees have the same hours, different shifts, but same hours going forward. And I heard that some employees are not coming into work, apparently, that there are reduced hours. And I don't quite understand why. That wouldn't all be exactly the same. And if that's not the same, and particularly it sounds like highway, it sounds like maybe the road crews are not in on a regular basis because they were apparently called in for this morning's snow as compared to being in, but the transfer station people are working. So I don't understand how that happened, because it seems to me that the highway crews are absent morning calls, which, as I recall when I was on the board, would occur. They'd all be in the station first thing in the morning, and then they'd go out for their things. They probably do it the same way. This is pretty good weather to get a jump on work. This town just voted for a lot of money to support the road plan. I would hope that we would be figuring out a way to deal with things as much as we can. I'm not aware of social distancing issues with road crews. And maybe there are some issues, maybe driving in the cab together or certain things, but certainly our police are dealing with that, and our fire seem to be dealing with it, so I'm not sure why everybody wouldn't be dealing with this. I think that I understand issues in regards to reduction of hours in the transfer station. I would say absent the library, the transfer station is probably the department that you've got more people having access to than anyone. You have a lot of people at home, and I would think that they're going to be looking to use that transfer station. Again, I'm not seeing, from my use of that facility, which has been pretty extensive over the years, and I know the layout pretty well because I was involved in the design of it. I'm not aware of the issues in regards to the use of the facility itself. And my concern arises because we can talk about things like 2 weeks or 80 hours. I'm looking at this great thing that was put together in regards to what the issues are, and sick pay, but everybody pays a tax bill in this town to support people, and you can support people maybe for 2 weeks, but at the end of 2 weeks, what? Because we have no idea how long this is going to go on. I would point out it's not the first pandemic. 2009 we had one. I don't think anybody recalls such a reaction. The rates were significant and none of this went on, but we have to deal with what we have to deal with. I look at next week's weather forecast and I see a snowstorm. So are you going to be paying people overtime who come in at night to plow who were paid to not come in? That's something that I think you need to address. And I think you need to be looking at all the avenues. I also will know, but this will go to show you what an old crabby residence I am. I don't know, the fire and police station, when you walk in, is a locked lobby. The public isn't getting anywhere near anybody without somebody opening a door. It's been like that for years, not in Pinardville. When you go in, I know that that's open. I asked Derek how much traffic there was here in Town Hall at the beginning of the week. I understand there was very little. There are counters at all the public access. The police and fire have got windows. As a matter of fact, you often have to, dispatches right there in the police and the fire department, most of the time if you walk in, you have to hit a buzzer for somebody to even come out. I can't imagine that either of them have a lot of foot traffic. And I would hate to have residents coming down for a simple inquiry to be met with a sign on the door that it's locked. And I will note in the past that the fire department has been empty and that lobby is so secure, the outside doors are open for you to get into the lobby on Church Street, and they will be gone from the fire station. So there certainly isn't a security issue. And as to the health issues, I would point out that the state is certainly reacting to this, and I've been to the court multiple days this week, and they have a sign up that maybe we could consider, and I can give you this copy, before entering the facility. And it says, have you traveled internationally within the last 14 days, or have you had close contact with a sick person who has traveled? Do you have any of the following symptoms? If you answered yes to any of the questions, stop. Please do not enter. And then if you answered yes, please call this information number. And it says the court is open for business. However, bloody, bloody, blah are not occurring. I have spoken to the Hillsborough County. I'm a member, and I'll pass this over to Derek. I have spoken to the Hillsborough County office. I'm a member of the Hillsborough County delegation from the state to decide what they're doing. They're very concerned with the equity of the treatment of all of their employees. We have a nursing home that we expect to be staffed. It is being staffed. We have jails that we expect to be staffed. It is being staffed. Offices are also being staffed. They're instituting a policy that says if people have accrued sick or vacation leave, they are entitled to use it. And that is the basis on which the Hillsborough County Commissioners have voted to go forward. I'm not sure how it plays into this 80-hour sick leave that I'm seeing the extension of. I think they still have to deal with that. I'm not quite up to date on all of that, but I know all of that, whether it's the county or the town, comes out of our taxpayers' pockets. And we want everybody to be safe, but I would like there to be consistency in application of treatment with an eye on still serving the public to the most you can. Now, I will admit, after a week or two of homeschooling, that the transfer station on Saturday might become the most popular place in town for people trying to go and just to get somewhere, and I acknowledge that. And maybe there are certain things that you have to keep things moving around, but, you know, I think the library is trying, I acknowledge that all the departments are trying to do the best job they can. But I will tell you, when I was contacted about the planning board meeting, I was like, it would operate something like this room is set up right now, and I am planning on attending next Thursday at this time. Things could change dramatically between now and next week, but given our knowledge of what is going on, I don't expect it to change that much. And I have asked to make sure that if people need to call in, that we figure out that we can have multiple lines here, so more than one person can call in. You can call out, I'm not sure about managing it from a call-in. There are services that certainly provide that. So I think the planning board meeting can go on. There is an issue with the planning board item that normally would require conservation comment, and conservation in regards to a wetland buffer issue. We will not have that input, so that will be one of the things that staff will be talking to the applicant about. But I appreciate the library's reference to trying to maintain some normalcy in this time, and I hope that you recognize that absent the library, which actually has a board of trustees, this board is in charge of the departments in this town and how they go forward. And the employees are all employees of this town, and I think they should be treated consistently in regards to what policies you're using to the extent you can. I understand that there may be contract issues that preclude or override any consideration, and I think that the paperwork that was put together from town hall staff that you have in regards to what to do is really good. So I wish the board luck on its consideration of how to proceed. I would like for the board to ask that there be some follow-up with department heads to find out how many people did they have coming in as compared to how many people are they having coming in. I understand that a lot of things can be handled by phone calls and may not require direct responses, but as always, I point out that if we start acknowledging that things don't need direct responses now, the answer to the question of why do they need it ever will have to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, you gave me this news release. Did you want me to read this?
Which news release is that?
Steps take the limit from the governor.
I don't think that was intentional.
Okay.
That wasn't on the list to do tonight.
Okay. So, before I get into this, let's just do the gas. Why don't you, let's just get that right out of the way.
I'll make a motion for you that we implement, lock in those gas prices immediately.
Second.
Hold on, I think it's to allow the town administrator to
Yep.
lock in the price, right? Go ahead.
Can I speak to it just real quick, because the public doesn't have the benefit of a packet, and this was not agended separately. Our current gas and diesel supplier reached out to us and said that basically the market for both gasoline and diesel had gone significantly lower. Currently, we pay $2 a gallon for gas, and it's down to $1.39 per gallon, and then diesel is down. We currently pay, let's see, I think it's $1.39, and it's down to $1.98. So that's a significant savings between 60 cents and 40 cents per gallon on each. And they asked if we were interested in locking in to add on to the end of our current contract. So what I'd request from the board tonight is authorization to negotiate that with our current gas and diesel supplier, which is Santa Energy.
I'll modify my motion.
So what he said?
That we authorize the town administrator to act expeditiously to deal with our suppliers to lock in the rates at the most favorable point as they are right now.
And that's presented to us, which is $1.39
Correct.
for gasoline and $1.98 or $1.9818, which is $2.38 now, so.
Second.
It was motion by Collis, seconded by Mark. Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
think the only other thing that we had for you tonight was, last night, the president signed in let's see, what was it called? Basically, the first response to COVID-19 had changes to FMLA leave as well as sick leave. So Danielle did a great job today going through that, as well as going through our personnel plan and our contracts, our CBAs, so we can come up with a Q&A to kind of guide employees through what kind of leave they would take. And again, since she's done such a fabulous job going through that today, I'd ask that she present that to you, because she's really a subject matter expert at the moment.
Come on. Go ahead, Danielle.
Well, the printed copy here is about a little over 50 pages. It was just passed at the federal level and signed into law by the president last night. And the full copy actually became available today around midday. So in looking through that, I compared the changes implemented by the emergency coronavirus-related act, as well as comparing our policies across non-union and all of the CBAs that we have. As you know, we do have 4 different unions in town. So I compared those and then noted that the nuances between the 4 CBAs and the non-union plan, while there are various nuances, were not significant enough to tonight's discussion to highlight them separately on this type of Q&A, which is why you have one version in front of you rather than one per contract. So I think it is a lot of information, but I think it might be best for us to address them as they are here, and we can kind of stop and discuss. You'll also notice there are several sections that I've highlighted in red that I noted would be good things for the board to discuss in relation to the different topics. So the first page you see are what do I do if, and it gives you 5 different scenarios. What do I do if I'm sick? What if I need to care for a family member? What if I miss work to take care of my children who are without childcare? And those various types of questions. The top tier that you see is current policies as they stand in relation to those specific scenarios. And then the bottom section there on that first page is the COVID-19 minimum adjustments required by the new law. So some of the things to point out, currently, if I'm sick, you would use your department's procedure for calling out. You would use available accrued sick time to cover any lost pay. Full-time employees who would be out longer than 30 days would then apply for short-term disability. The sick leave in excess of 3 days would trigger FMLA. And then any admittance into a medical facility might trigger FMLA as well. So the adjustments, as you can see, the COVID-19 adjustment would be the same procedure for calling out a department. They would still follow the department's procedure. However, the biggest changes are that they may take the first 10 days as unpaid leave without being required to use any of their existing leave time. That is at the employee's discretion, and we are not allowed to require them to do otherwise. Also, they may choose to use any type of accrued time to cover those 10 days, whereas now a policy may require if you're sick, it has to be sick time. Now they can take their vacation time or whatever else they may choose to use. Then after the 10 days, as it says on here, the town will pay 2/3 of the employee's regular rate. That is required under the new law. After 10 days, if it is an FMLA qualifying event, which if the employee themselves is sick, it is required, the town will have to pay, as any employer who has fewer than 500 employees, the 2/3 regular rate. And that regular rate is the regular rate under the Department of Labor, Fair Labor Standards Act, which means if we look back and do a calculation and determine that an employee normally has an average amount of sick time, of overtime, that is considered part of their regular rate of pay. It is not just 2/3 of their 40 hours. So we would have to do a lot of calculations to make sure we are meeting at least that minimum 2/3. Also, that minimum 2/3 is paid out of the town's pocket. That is not something that digs into any of the employees' accruals. That is required under the new law. Additionally, the employee can choose, under the new law, to supplement that last third of their regular pay with any of their accrued time. So they don't have to, but they could, which would get them a full paycheck, 100% as they would normally see it. Similarly, I'm not having to go into the same detail because a lot of it carries over, but similarly, if they needed to take time to care for a family member, at the current policy, it was at the discretion of the department head if they could use sick time. Now, under the new law, we can't say at the discretion. They are allowed to use any accrued time, and it's the same 10 days. First 10 days could be unpaid, or they could choose to use any of their time, including sick time, even if our regular policy wouldn't allow it. What do I have to do if I need to miss work to care for my children? The law specifies it's for children 18 and under, so it does allow, if you're 17 years old and you feel the need to stay home to care for that 17-year-old, you can do that. And we do not have the discretion to say otherwise. They would use their normal department's call-out procedure. Under our current policies, they would use available vacation or personal time, or, if they had any comp time, they could use that. And FMLA would only be triggered if the child is under the age of 1 year old, or if the child has only been in the employee's household for less than a year. The changes to this is one of the biggest ones. Now, you would still notify your department through the regular procedure for calling out. You would have to notify your department of the anticipated length of leave needed if you can try to predict that to some degree, or at least check in with your department periodically to let them know that that need continues. FMLA would be immediately triggered under the new law, and so you would be able to take up to 12 weeks. After the first 10 days, we go to the same thing as before. You can take up to the first 10 days unpaid or use your time. After that, the town has to pay 2/3, and they could then supplement that. The pay is subject to new FMLA and sick leave rules. Additionally, one of the things that I need to add to this printout is that we cannot require telework for this particular event. If somebody is home caring for a child who's under the age of 18 and they say that they cannot telework in relation to that, we cannot require that they do so. No, it's a lot of information. The next one we have here is a little bit more general. What if I need to miss work due to blank? That blank could be a number of things. It could be to care for a family member who's not identified as an immediate family member under the policies. It could be because the employee has car trouble or some other emergency, their heating system died or whatever it may be. There are no specific COVID-19 related changes to this policy at this time, so the employee would be under their regular procedure for calling out and could use their vacation or personal time in accordance with their regular CBA. The last one here, my department changed my schedule. So currently, the policies say that you would report to work as directed by the new schedule. If the building is closed and you're directed not to work remotely, then emergency pay under our current policies would be applicable, and it would cover 100% of lost wages. So that would be in the existing policies, and there are no specific adjustments to COVID-19, although I highlighted the fact that the board may want to be reviewing that in general. I do have side-by-side comparisons that we could delve into later on if we needed to regarding emergency leave and how that's determined by the departments. So as we go into the next pages, we actually address some of the specific questions that might have come up from that highlighted summary. Right now, the terms of the new expansion law, they begin no later than 15 days after the law was enacted. The town can begin utilizing that as soon as they'd like to, but no later would be April 2nd, and it sunsets on December 31st of 2020. So when can I use my sick time? You'll see there you have a list of qualifying events under FMLA, and that includes some additional changes. These additional changes to sick time are not specifically in relation to the qualifying events under FMLA, but rather in addition to sick time, and the two do often overlap. So let me know if you come into questions there. Some new qualifying events include the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation related to COVID-19. The employee may have been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine. The employee could be experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeks a medical diagnosis. The employee caring for an individual who is subject to an order described above, so a quarantine as you see in item 1, or has been advised to, as described in item number 2, which would be a self-quarantine. The employee caring for a son or daughter of such employee that the school or place of care for that son or daughter has been closed, or the child care provider is unavailable due to COVID-19 related items. And then number 6, the employee is experiencing any other substantially similar conditions specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So what this means is this sick time expands what we allow under our sick time. Currently, if you're sick, then you can use your sick time. But in this case, it significantly expands what they're allowed to use that sick time for. Additionally, as you're going to see in the next 2 bullets, this is one of the largest changes. What if I don't have any sick time? This new law provides an additional 80 hours of sick leave for full-time employees, regardless of if they're a 40-hour employee or a 35-hour employee. If they are classified as full-time, they get 80 hours allotted. Additionally, an equivalent number of hours worked on average over a 2-week period for those part-time employees. So if we have employees who, work a 25-hour week schedule, they'd be entitled to 50 hours. This time is available immediately upon commencement of them having a qualifying event, and it does not affect any of their existing accruals. So we cannot require that they use existing sick time first. We have to let them use this new time before they get into any of their other accruals. What if sick time runs out? Well, as you can see, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act is to be used prior to the existing accruals. After the additional time is exhausted, they could then turn to any of their accrued time and utilize the sick bank if that were applicable to their situation. Some of the things to note, these new sick time policies, at the employer's discretion, emergency responders may be excluded. So that is something where the board would have to make a decision before we start with the enactment of this law, whether or not they are excluding that classification of employee. Yeah.
Can I ask questions?
Absolutely. This is a lot, so I figured we'll take a break here and answer the sick time questions.
So under this, so do we know for the qualifying events, where somebody would be able to use sick time, do any of these impact if they've been approved by FMLA, or have they changed that it's just an automatic?
It's an automatic now for the sick time. It doesn't have to be an FMLA approved. The other caveat to this is the law does not address any required documentation. So we don't have to use the same documentation requirements that we typically would.
So, yeah, that's a good point. On the I am sick portion of what we currently do, I wrote return to work note, because I think we should talk about what that means in this context of where we currently sit. I'll stop there. We'll go through the next section.
Derek?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Derek.
Can you speak a little bit about what is an eligible employee under the new law?
Yes. Yep, that's a great point. So, are you referring to sick time or FMLA? Because right now
FMLA.
Okay, there's another FMLA section.
Oh, okay, then,
Sorry.
yeah, if you could save that till then.
Okay. I just don't want to confuse anybody
Yep,
with
I
the
see.
sick time, because that's specific to everyone. As far as a qualifying employee for the sick time, it is immediate. So if you are an employee, you automatically qualify. There's no, terms of service requirement or anything of that sort. A couple things I noted on here to consider. Not all employees have access to the sick bank. Certain current sick bank policies do not require they use accrued time before they access the sick bank. They have to use their sick time, but not necessarily any other types of accrued time. Also, the sick bank has not been tracking unused part-time employee leave.
that's something that we would need to discuss going forward for future policies. And the new law requires that we expand what is considered a qualifying sick time event only for the emergency sick time that as defined above in the new law, but it does not necessarily require that we allow access to the sick bank for these same qualifying events. So that's,
Can I ask another question
Yes.
about the emergency responders?
yes.
So, I don't have the full language in front of me, but it does say, may elect to exclude such employees from the application of the subsection.
Mm-hmm.
Did they give any guidance on what any amended changes to their current structure, or is it just simply follow the CBA and current policies if they're excluded from these?
If they're excluded, they would be subject to, so the new law does state that anything in here does not diminish any right that the employee currently has under their existing CBAs or state or federal laws or any other employer policies that already exist. So if we chose, if there was a choice to exclude the emergency responders from the additional qualifications, they would still be eligible for FMLA or sick time use under the current policies as they stand. In the law, it also says it excludes certain healthcare providers as well, but that wasn't applicable as applicable as emergency responders.
So, to quantify.
Mhm.
So if emergency responders were basically deciding if they fall under the new FMLA requirements and not the previous or current FMLA policies as they stand, is that correct?
Yes, also, we have the same exclusion option for the extension, the emergency sick time. So if an employee was an emergency responder and was excluded from this, then they would not get that additional 2 weeks of time. However, they would also not be able to use the sick time for the 6 new categories.
Any more questions?
Not on that part.
Pardon me?
Not on that part.
Go right ahead, Daniel.
Vacation time. So do I need to use my vacation time? If the leave is in relation to a covered FMLA event, you actually get to choose whether or not to use the vacation time, as we kind of highlighted before. The vacation time could replace or supplement missing pay if you're unable to telework, and that is at their option. If you're out of work and the event is not covered by FMLA and you are out of emergency sick time provided under these new sick time provisions, then you must first use your accrued vacation, personal, and compensatory time before taking unpaid FMLA. So that still stands in place if it's not covered under the new extension.
Do they know any impact on working with that with like short-term disability or long-term? Like say anything about that?
Nope, so short-term disability would still be subject to the same requirements under our insurance carrier. Currently, we have a 30-day waiting period before you can access that benefit. Also, another thing that you may want to discuss, currently unpaid leave not covered by FMLA must be approved by the board. And that might be something you'd want to review.
Why would we want to review it?
Because right now, we're just saying that if they're taking unpaid leave and it's not FMLA, they'd have to come to you, which they could still do. I'm not sure if your revised meeting schedule or perhaps any of the other qualifying categories may come into consideration.
So you're saying it could be a timing thing with meetings?
Potentially.
But I think what you're saying is the expanded qualifications under which people would fall under FMLA.
May mitigate unpaid
How many?
approvals.
So how would that work if it doesn't meet the time frame?
Well, an employee can continue to take their leave as directed in all of our current policies, which does include emergency leave. And again, that emergency leave is at the discretion of the department heads at this point. So, subject to review by the board as always, but that is something to consider. We had some questions in here about unemployment, because that is a big factor with the new law extending additional funding to the states for unemployment. So when would you file for unemployment? So each time you become unemployed or have your hours significantly reduced, we could not find a clear definition under the state of New Hampshire of significantly reduced. We would have to continue researching that. That's not our area of expertise because it typically only occurs when someone separates from duty. However, in light of the situation, if a building were closed and somebody was left with less hours than normal, that may come into play. Employees would need to file each week. Something to note, employees whose hours are cut but are still receiving regular pay would not be eligible to file for the additional unemployment benefits because their pay is not reduced. So what would be the impact to your overall pay? We don't have a clear answer on that because that is a calculation that New Hampshire unemployment would actually provide to the employee directly. So what we do know currently is the maximum weekly benefit is $427 a week, which is significantly below our full-time amounts because it's only a portion of what minimum wage would be. And the minimum weekly amount is $32 a week. The law is unclear if there's a requirement for the state to increase the maximum, and it does point to the federal state Extended Unemployment Compensation Act of 1970. So we'd have to refer to that if we needed to research that further. The impact to the employee benefits, right now, if an employee is still an employee of the town, then there would be no impact to their existing benefits. However, I recommend that there be a discussion about if an employee's hours were reduced and they were using unemployment, typically there is an employee portion of certain premiums like health and dental that we require in all of our contracts and plans. Would the board be covering that? Would the board be asking the employees to repay the town once they're back to work? We can't stop their benefit if they're still an employee. So we would have to continue to cover that bill, and the question would become, what happens afterwards?
Who pays the bill?
Who pays the bill? For the employee's portion. And then, would collecting unemployment impact my job? So collecting unemployment does not impact your job status specifically. So if your hours are cut and you're using unemployment, and you still have a job secured here, you haven't been officially separated from the town, then there is no impact to your existing status as an employee. So, does anybody have any questions about the unemployment section?
I have one question. What happens if somebody goes out on workman's comp with all of this?
So workman's comp still stands as a regular current terms. So if an employee is determined to have a case that is qualified under workman's comp, then they would be out on their regular 66 2/3 pay. They would supplement that pay with leave time of their choice. That could be the additional 2 weeks of emergency sick pay. Also, in order for it to be workers' comp, the insurance company would have to make a determination on the claim. Right now, the insurance company has notified us that if there is a claim related to COVID-19 and it requires testing, but the employee does not contract COVID-19, workman's comp will cover the testing. However, they will not cover lost wages unless it is proven that the employee contracted COVID-19 as a source through their work actions. So there is still a case-by-case determination on each of those, and it can get a little bit difficult, extremely difficult, with the HIPAA laws to prove that that contraction was made at an interaction at work.
So if they, heaven forbid, breaks their foot, okay, and they go out on workman's comp, so instead of getting the 66
Picking on me?
Pardon me?
This is what, you picking on me?
Yeah. I didn't mention your name by name, Mark.
I know. It's time for some-
So I'm just trying to clear up my head. So they could actually use their already accrued sick time or vacation time than the 80 hours
They would use their 80 hours first.
first?
Yes, if they have a qualifying event, that 80 hours is triggered before their actual time. So an employee's own illness is one of the qualifying events for that.
Okay.
And an injury would be the same category. Ready for the FMLA section?
Good.
I have a question on
Go ahead.
unemployment.
Yes.
So I mean, I know they changed, I'd really like to clarify what significantly reduced means. My assumption would be half or more, but I don't know. Do we know if they made any changes to, trying to wrap my head around what that means. So let's say an employee was to work 40 hours or 80 hours in the pay period, they're not working 1 week out of that time. Would that impact their calculation? Would they be able to use time off to supplement their pay to make them whole? Or do we know any of the?
Well, that does determine directly, like I said, through employment security. I can reach out to them. I did place a call today, but I left a message. As it stands currently, an employee would not be able to supplement their unemployment without that calculating into the equation as to what they're receiving and how much their pay is cut. So I don't think there'd really be a way to make them whole.
They'd have to predetermine it.
Right. Right. And then you had mentioned something else that I wanted to respond to, and it just escaped me. If it comes back to me, I'll address it. But unemployment is a little bit of a mystery from the calculation standpoint. And even in their frequently asked questions and all of the information they have on their website, they never put into writing anything other than an individual determination will be made on a week-to-week basis. So we do know for sure that an employee would need to continue filing weekly in case their status changes or they get more hours one week than another.
Under the DPW's reduced staffing, would they be able to tap into those 80 hours instead of, or does it have to be in a sick event?
It has to be a qualifying event under that sick time provision. So if the employee is healthy and they're not being quarantined specifically or self-quarantined or something of that sort, then they wouldn't be eligible to use that sick time.
Okay, and if an employee was on this reduced staffing, they're being paid, technically paid to stay home. And if they get hurt or in a traffic accident or something, we're not
liable. It's not work-related. It wouldn't be like a workman's comp or anything of that sort. It would be a short-term disability, just like it would if an employee were on the weekend playing a softball game and got hurt. It could be short-term disability.
Okay, so it wouldn't fall under the family I got sick or anything like that, no?
No, not beyond what would exist already. I mean, if somebody got hurt and it's a qualifying FMLA event, then an employee's injury would be a qualifying FMLA event under the regular rules and the expanded rules. However, it wouldn't necessarily be a qualifying event under short-term disability or something of that sort, or workman's comp.
For instance, trying to figure that out.
The biggest thing to remember as we go through this is FMLA is job protection. That means the employee can return to that same job or equivalent when they return to work, as opposed to the sick time pay, short-term disability, workman's comp. All three of those are pay protection to help the employee have pay while they're out. So that's really the big divide between FMLA and the other three types of leave.
Next.
Is FMLA, and it is getting a little bit more muddled because under the terms of the new law, FMLA now covers pay, which it never did before, and that's where I think that the lines start to get blurred. So again, these new terms under FMLA start 15 days at a minimum, 15 days later after the enactment, and they end on December 31st. So when you can use FMLA, it used to be that you had to work for the town for a full year and you had to meet a minimum number of hours per year in order to be eligible for FMLA, and now they say you are immediately eligible after 30 days of service. There's no minimum hours anymore. And this you'd have your qualifying events, the same qualifying events as before, you know, birth of a child, placement of a child with the employee, to care for an employee's spouse or son or daughter, some other immediate family member, to care for service members. Those all still exist. The addition and the big change is to care for a child of an employee whose school or place of care has been closed. And again, if that child care provider is unavailable, then it's a qualifying event. And we cannot require telework for that particular one. Again, under these new FMLA expansion, the last one is really the only new one, and that's to care for a child. The town could choose to exclude emergency responders from that specific qualifying event.
Just that one or all of the new?
That's the only new one.
Okay.
The other 6 are existing.
I have one more question on that.
Go ahead.
For the 30-day window for being eligible, does that limit any kind of protection length, or is it the standard?
It's the same, up to
time.
12 weeks. Another big difference with FMLA is the town elected, there are 4 different ways that you can calculate how many weeks, you know, of that 12 weeks an employee has left to use. And the town has elected, as many employers, the 12 months rolling backwards, which means when an employee is going to go out on day 1, we look back in the last 12 months and see if they've had any other qualifying events that they've been out and have cut into that 12-week allotment. What they're saying now under this new expansion is you cannot consider anything that's happened. If somebody just came back because they've been out for 12 weeks, doesn't matter. Their 12-week clock starts the second that they take a qualifying event under the new enactment in April. So we have to give them a fresh 12 weeks for job protection. Additionally, that job protection comes with partial pay protection, as we discussed.
So the 2/3 would
The
still be
2/3.
enacted?
So somebody could technically go out, come back in, work a week, and go back out again and for another 12 weeks.
They-
Now, would it have to be, who determines whether it qualifies? Like, if it was the same injury?
It doesn't, it's FMLA, so it doesn't matter if it's the same event. It just has to be a qualifying event under the categories, and we determine it, as we always have in the finance office, based on the rules. We have to follow the Department of Labor forms, where we have to go through and mark off which of the categories it is. The difference is, in the past, we used to be able to require certain certifications to prove that it was qualifying.
Okay, I'm thinking in terms of the 80 hours. Somebody goes out with a foot injury and they're on FMLA. They take advantage of the 80 hours, which they're entitled to. Come back to work for a week, they can't work on that, this bothers them too much. They can go back out again on FMLA, if I understood what you said, and qualify for another 80 hours?
That's a good question.
No, not for another 80 hours. The 80 hours was pay protection. However, it really depends on the timing of when they go out that first time around. If they went out the first time around after this law is enacted, then it counts towards their 12. And if they come back, it counts towards their 12. They can't use that 12 twice. If they went out before this law was enacted and they were actively using their 12 and came back, they'd get a fresh 12 for that second one.
Okay.
But to Peter's point, is there anything changing with the reasonable return to work accommodations or any kind of a doctor would have to weigh in to take somebody out again if they couldn't
Right.
do. So none of that's changed. They still have the same application process, except for
Yes
some
and no.
documents?
Yes and no. They would have to still file the same application process. However, we can't necessarily require, like in the past, we would require a doctor's certification that you need to be out, and we have to allow 15 calendar days for them to provide that. That's now gone. If they come to us and they say, I'm using this FMLA specifically for the closure of the school, we don't have to require specific documentation. We don't have a standard form that we require. We just have to take their word for it, so to speak. That's one of the biggest things. Additionally, since they can now, under the new sick leave expansion, they can self-quarantine without doctor's recommendation. Again, that would be them using it for their own sickness, and we'd have no way to require the documentation that we have previously. We can always ask, and if they have something they can provide, then obviously that would be what we'd be looking for. But we can't make the hard determined, negative reply as we would before to say this is denied. So can you use FMLA and short-term disability pay? Yes, as long as it qualifies for short-term disability pay, you can still use that to cover it. However, again, under FMLA, it's already going to be covered at a 2/3 rate after that first 10 days. And then can I take the FMLA leave unpaid is a question that comes up. Again, the first 10 days can be unpaid at their choice. However, after the 10 days, the employer must pay the 2/3, so you can't really take it unpaid, but you could take that last third unpaid if you did not want to supplement it. There is a note here that in no event the paid leave shall exceed $200 per day and a $10,000 in aggregate. That is a big difference for us because, of course, a $200 per day caps out somewhere around $25 an hour, and a lot of our employees may be above that if they're a full-time employee with many years of service, or depending on what their classification or labor grade might be. So that would be something that we'd have to make sure we look into as well, because this 2/3 kind of has a cap on it. The employer can choose to go above that. We don't have to only pay the 2/3. We don't have to cap it. That's all discussions that the board can choose to have.
Well, Daniel, can we extend FMLA?
We can extend FMLA. The employer always has the option. The FMLA is a minimum of up to 12 weeks.
I know we've done it in the past, but I was just wondering if the new law,
Yes, yeah, you can, and you can use the same requirements or the same qualifications for events until that 12/31 date.
thank you.
Any other questions in relation to FMLA?
Well, what was the answer on the accrued time while you're out?
You can choose to supplement your paid or unpaid leave while you're out. The last big section I have here is emergency leave. Can I use emergency leave? And currently, our policies say that emergency leave may be granted by the appointing authority or their designee without loss of pay. It shall include critical illness or death in the immediate family if an employee is subpoenaed to appear before court, or any other such situation considered meritorious by the appointing authority or their designee. Emergency leave shall be supplementary to and not in restriction of sick leave or annual vacation or personal leave that is provided in the policies.
We already have some of that in place now.
That is our policy.
Right.
Emergency leave is not covered by the new law. This whole section is what we
Okay.
have now. And then how does it affect my pay? Well, emergency leave as it currently stands is 100% replacement of your pay without using accrued time. It's typically, the intent behind it, what it was developed for was for those shorter types of leave, like a bereavement, because we don't have bereavement separately identified. But as you can see, it's somewhat vague in the requirements.
And who's the appointed authority, granted by the appointed authority?
Right now, that's the board, and then they have identified in each of the various policies that the department head is the designee.
subject to review it by the select board.
And then the other question, how does emergency leave affect my pay or affect my benefits? So if emergency leave is granted, there really would there would be no impact to your benefits because we would be taking your regular deductions out of your pay just like normal. One thing I would recommend is if we were going to consider using emergency time with something in relation to this type of, potential closures or partial closures. Right now, emergency leave does not address whether or not people would continue to accrue sick time. If somebody's out on sick time, the policies all state that your sick time accrual would be halted while you're out on that extended sick time. However, emergency time's never really been used for an extended period of time. It's been used for maybe a one-day closure due to weather or a short duration for bereavement. So we've never had anybody who's out for, more than half the month or something like that. So it's never impacted accruals, but it may going forward.
Would it be your recommendation that we put some times in there? I know my company, it's like, if it's not a direct relative, like, if it's a cousin or something, you only get, like 3 days. If it's longer than that, it's like 5 days, so.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, it would be good to have some guidelines or kind of recommendations to look at. The only thing to keep in mind is the emergency leave provisions are in each of the CBAs. Some of the CBAs luckily point towards the non-union policy, so if the non-union policy changes, it has a trickle-down effect. But certain ones, such as Teamsters, does not have that. It does not point to the non-union plan, so you wouldn't be able to impact their emergency leave provisions unless the contract were renegotiated.
So I think that's something, as we go forward, we need to make sure that we address, just to clear, we talk about clearing things up all the time and tying up loose ends. That could potentially be something we could clear up when we're negotiating or even going through the personnel plan.
Yeah, same thing with the FMLA. A lot of them are starting to point towards the non-union plan, and I think for things like emergency leave or FMLA that are directed either by a law or by the board's discretion, it may be good to have those point to a place where it can be impacted if needed to be.
Go ahead.
So that's
Anybody got any questions on that? No? Good. Go
That's
ahead.
really where we end the highlight of all the various policies. I understand that is a lot of information. Like I said, it's a long law, and we have 4 CBAs to consider. There are a list of other questions here that Selectwoman Boyer had put together for, week to week, kind of an idea for departments to consider in their reports to the board, as well as some other things to consider that are more general. I do want to mention that the Health Trust has provided us with notification that they've expanded some of their coverage. So if you have group insurance through our policies, they've expanded certain things like testing is 100% covered for COVID-related testing, and there's no co-insurances or co-pays. Same thing for your doctor's visits related to the COVID outbreak. There is no co-pay or anything of that sort. There's a few other changes. We're going to be sending out a notice to all employees of those expanded benefits. It doesn't change the premiums at all. It's just an expansion of benefits.
There's a lot to go through there. Is there any questions? Go
Are
ahead.
you asking seriously?
I knew that was. What is that, like a stoplight?
I know we have some, who doesn't have sick time currently?
Currently, our on-call fire personnel and EMS personnel do not have any sick time. Our sick time is restricted to employees who have set schedules right now. So part-time employees and full-time employees with regular schedules do have time.
I think they need to be at least 20 hours.
At least 20 hours, that is
So
correct. Thank
we
you.
do have some part-time employees that work less than 20 hours that
Right.
do not have sick time.
yeah, same thing with our videographers and things of that sort.
Whereas this just came out recently and it affects the rest of the year. Do you see anything on here that's going to affect our budget?
Oh, the additional time and things like that are of course potential impacts to the budget, but they're impacts to the budget not on what we've already accrued. I mean, you have to remember every employee is budgeted for their scheduled hours, so the payroll is there, and the difference would be from a production
I was
standpoint,
gonna say the productivity would be
not in a monetary sense, but in a production sense.
Or in departments where we backfill using overtime.
Departments.
So,
Well, I mean, it could affect the budget overtime anyway, all over, if somebody goes out and, you know, you got 4 or 5 people that use their 80 hours and then
Yeah.
you're trying to cover for them, that affects the budget.
Additionally to that question, decreased revenues could impact our budget as well. If everybody in the motor vehicles office is out because of an outbreak or something of that sort, or everybody in the, another office is out, that could really change what we're seeing from a revenue standpoint. Or if the state extends, motor vehicle doesn't have to register until April or May or something, it could slow down cash flow.
Sure. Kelly, you had another question?
I just wanted to take a minute to go through this, if that's
Sure.
okay.
The very last
Anyone else
page
has
at the
any
bottom is
questions?
the list.
So this, I just want to say, I put together this template, but Danielle did the amazing work in less than 24 hours of filling this in. So Danielle, thank you. So, like, I literally wrote the questions and she added all this context. So thank you so much for doing that. But for these questions that I put at the end, I tried to format this. The first is, what do we currently do? And then, perceiving it from the employee's perspective of what kind of questions they might have, and then just moving forward as we're kind of moving to this week-to-week basis. These are questions I have, so I thought I wanted to share those with you guys. I don't know if we want them consistently or if people have thoughts. Do you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that we do these on a regular basis. I mean, right now, we're meeting every week, and maybe we could do them every other week. But on a regular basis, we could do it on our regular meetings, and just go through them briefly, just almost like we do, with our pending stuff, so.
And the one thing, yes, that would be great. The one thing I wanted to add on the first one, I guess we could switch these to number order to make it a little easier. For the first one, how are departments handling workloads? A sub-question I asked to that is, do you have enough? So as we're switching people's direct responsibilities, if they're public-facing and they've switched to different responsibilities, in the way that department heads are managing their employees, how long can they sustain this, right? As we're going week to week, we should be making sure that they have enough to
Enough what?
maintain and work to do.
Well, we need to have, yeah.
Right,
I
however their
think as-
schedules are being
as-
mixed.
If I understand, everybody's kind of scaling back on the regular stuff to take care of this, so I think there's always gonna be plenty of work to do, am I right? I mean,
Well, except that I'm a department that's very public-facing, so you take out the public,
sure, that makes sense.
and it does affect the workload.
But you still have a lot you can be doing over there.
Right, but not for 3 months.
No,
You know what
okay.
I mean? As we continue, it's.
And
gonna be
Diane, what would your
harder.
plan to be in 3 months if this was to happen?
I don't know,
Okay.
just to be totally honest.
But it's something to be looking at in the future.
Yeah,
We all should be
exactly.
looking at that. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
And I think that's where I was going with that, is do we have potential for employees to work in other departments where there's greater, or like, how can we work together to structure it
Right.
based on needs? I don't know, that's where I was coming with that one.
So I know, Rick, you're reduced down too, right?
Well, I only have 3 people.
But I
So
mean,
it's a different world.
yeah,
If I look at 3 months down the road, what do we have? We have our lacrosse program, which is imminent April if it ever happens. Okay, so that's one thing. Then we get into our summer playground program, then we get into our camps and all that stuff. So if all that is dwindled down to nothing, we still have to tend to the fields, we still have to mow grass and things like that. My plan is, we have ground supervisor, myself, we're mowing, and the program supervisor is mowing. So we
Okay.
have plenty of things to do if everybody's okay with that. Safe distance, social distance, whatever those technical words are.
we go forward.
Right. Fire chief, go ahead, Danielle. It's
I was just
you.
gonna say that I know in town hall, we've discussed there are certain departments that could utilize extra hands. I haven't quantified that to how many months that would be, but I know in finance, we've already reached out to some of our counterparts in land use and other divisions to say, hey, we have some notices going out that are, time sensitive, we could use some extra hands, and so they volunteered to do that.
And I'll just say, like with all the other departments, this has been, today was the first day that we were not open to the public. So, again, looking months down the road, I guess, I don't know.
I don't even care about months. I'm talking weeks. I mean, even 2 or 3
There's
weeks.
definitely, yeah, there's definitely enough. We are trying to ramp up our online services. We're trying to ramp up the information that we have out there. If we get to a point where there's not enough work, then we would reach out to other departments and then bring that information to the board.
Yeah, I think I was just looking for a check-in point instead of a
Sure.
month-to-month plan. Who knows how long this will go. And then just one other thing, you guys can read through them on your own. What impacts are we seeing or anticipating to the budget? I think maybe adding overtime perhaps to that line would be helpful as well, just as kind of a check-in point too. It's
You mean
changing.
what do you mean, adding to it, or researching it?
Yeah, because.
We have that book in the office there that has that's updated on a regular basis as far as each department's overtime.
What we can do is we can start, now that the budget has been passed and adopted, and you'll start seeing your monthly budget reports, we can start working with department heads to, as things progress, we can start doing projections on where we think if we have any trouble areas, especially in OT.
And we spoke today a little bit at the emergency management meeting that we may be looking at someplace where we have to find monies too. So that's something we'll be looking at. Adam already volunteered equipment and stuff. But I mean, that is stuff we were looking at, talked about today, so dollars are important. Go ahead.
One of the things I was just going to comment on regarding reimbursements and the budget, the question about what will FEMA reimburse is still an unknown. We are currently tracking everything we possibly can, but we don't know where that start and stop's going to be. Is it going to be strictly supplies? Is it going to involve any sort of additional, if we had overtime or things like that, would they cover some percentage of that? We're not sure, so we're just tracking everything that we can.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any other questions? Kelly, do you have anything you want to talk about more?
Yes, please. I would like to potentially talk to both of our chiefs to see the impact that the decision to exclude them from these changes, what that might have on their staff and how they're.
The decision to do what? I'm sorry.
Exclude them as essential personnel from these changes, if that's, I want to hear what they think about it.
Yeah, I think that's a
if
good
okay.
point, but I think maybe we should do that on Monday. Give them a chance to digest this a little bit. I don't even know if they've had much of a chance to, Chief's back there going,
They got it tonight, just.
oh, okay, so, yeah, let's let them, maybe they could take a look at that and get back to us on Monday night, and give them a chance to swallow a little bit of it and come up with the answer. Anything else? Great job, Danielle, thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Awesome job, Danielle.
There's a lot to digest there in such a
There's a
short
lot.
time.
As you can see, I've got all my spreadsheets and I had to put it on big paper because it was too small.
Hey, Derek, did you have anything else, or besides what I wanted to bring up Adam to go over the couple of things?
I think the only other thing that I have is your meeting schedule. Right now, we do have a meeting scheduled for Monday night. We will discuss, you'll need to elect a chair for the upcoming year. We have a public hearing at 6:30 and then at 6:45 for an acceptance of road and one for your fee schedules. We talked about a few weeks. We can go over this a little bit more, and there may be a few other business items, but there isn't a whole lot on there. If anything comes out of the state that severely changes it, We will adapt as needed, and then if there are any members that need to participate remotely, if you could reach out to me so we can make arrangements for that, we can arrange to do that.
Derek, what do we have for public hearings next week?
Acceptance of John King Drive, which is off of Shirley Hill Road. I believe that one's at 6:30, and then the fee schedule update that we discussed on the 9th, that was put for public hearing again. Those were all scheduled immediately after your meeting on the 9th, and
Sure.
a lot has changed in a week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we could have, who knows what's gonna come up between now and then also,
Yeah.
so.
Peter, can I
Go
ask,
ahead.
I know, so we have to make the decision of whether to include or not include our first responders in these changes, and that would potentially impact the time frame in which everybody or specific groups would use this. Is there anything statutorily that we're gonna make changes from now until Monday? Like, are we clear on what our current processes are and policies are?
I think
or-
we just gotta follow what we have in front of us now until we review it again on Monday, I would think.
So then, that being said, what do we do about the DPW department changes, the schedule
Oh, that's,
changes?
we're gonna call Adam up right now.
Oh, okay.
That's
Oh,
right.
wait. Thank you.
And then at the end, we still have at the end non-public, right? You said we
That's
don't-
only if you need it.
Oh, okay, so.
That's
you-
only
that
if you,
wasn't-
that's only if you need it, if it's gonna be specific to emergency functions, or if it's gonna be specific to a specific, compensation of employee or anything like that. I
But
think.
you don't have anything on the agenda for that?
No, I noticed it in case you needed it, in case it went to that, especially with discussions of emergency functions, when you're talking in general terms,
I think we did that, pretty much did general terms tonight. so.
yeah.
So, and then we'll do another non-public at the end, too. Adam, did you wanna come on up?
Maybe I'll get us all out of here quick. I'll make a suggestion. If we could discuss Monday night transfer station, we're open for the normal hours this Saturday. I'd like to see how it looks, see what the load is, get a report back from the staff that's there. We can discuss Monday night, that's fine. And then any of the personnel stuff, I think, is a non-public issue. So that'd be my recommendation tonight. Let us get through a weekend here, see what the social distancing, state, national, federal emergency, state of the transfer station is on Saturday.
So as you heard tonight, does any of this affect your scheduling the way you had changed it?
Of the transfer station?
No, of your personnel?
Of the personnel, I'd like to talk about that at non-public if we're gonna go down that road, I guess. That's both for emergency functions and I
And
guess,
compensation, yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll do that then. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say that the scheduling of employee hours is absolutely not non-public. If you're gonna start talking about individuals, then you're talking about non-public. But if you're talking about hours of operation, that is absolutely public.
I think Mr. Chair, I think the primary reason to go to non-public for that discussion of scheduling of employees that a public works department would be emergency functions under I. Primary goal right now is trying to flatten the curve, and I think I put that a little more eloquently than right now, but the other night during the first meeting, but we could certainly talk about it again. The reasoning behind that, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do there.
Derek, what's your feeling on,
I can get more specific guidance from NHMA on,
is flattening the curve,
I can ask that on,
making personnel changes or adjustments in personnel hours to flatten the curve, is that non-public?
I can get that direction from NHMA and have that answer Monday night, so we can have the discussion in the appropriate venue.
Okay.
I think the additionally to the reasoning behind, and that part I put out just now because I feel that is a public discussion we should all be having, setting the example for the town, we're trying to model the behavior we want to see and try to follow the guidance we've been given from the federal government about what we should be trying to do as a community. So that piece is certainly public. I think the non-public piece comes into what are we trying to save our powder dry for, what comes up, what might be needed in the future and where are things going, absolutely is most certainly a non-public item.
Kelly?
Are we gonna talk about this, or? Yes.
To the
Okay.
extent where we're not going to get into, go ahead.
So-
If we
Yep.
feel that your question isn't appropriate, we'll stop.
I hear what you're saying, and your job is to advocate for your employees, so thank you for doing that.
And for the town.
However, yeah. How is DPW operating under a different scope than any of our other departments that are still currently staffed and working? With potentially space accommodations, responsibility accommodations?
So I agree with what Ms. Griffin said earlier. I think we should be treating all the departments equally to a degree. Those that can, was it my call? I think Town Hall would have fewer people physically on premises right now. Parks and Rec would have fewer people on premises. I think what the community needs is modeling from our leaders, what we're looking to have the community do. And if we want to encourage people to be out and about and business as usual, then I think business as usual, fine, but it's not. We're not in that phase. I think the emergency services fall under a different category for the very reason that the federal law that they just enacted last night carves them out. It doesn't carve out Public Works, doesn't carve out Town Hall, it carves out emergency services. Why? Because they are at a different level. They are under shift operations that we are not currently, so they have already some built-in physical distancing of their shifts. They are under some different RSAs where they're going to be required to work in certain circumstances, which we're not. So it really boils down to what we feel are essential functions of the town, what we need to be able to preserve, I feel, so we can continue operations. I think these same questions fall into play with the police and fire departments. If we start losing police officers and firefighters, you know, what's the plan B once you start quarantining? I'm trying to head that off. I'm trying to follow the best guidance that we have from the community above us about how to make sure that we do, as I said, flatten that curve. It's not just for the benefit of the employees, and I am advocating for the employees, of course, their health is primary, but for the town, you know, our department's no good to the town. We can accomplish nothing if everybody's down. So I think as a country, we should be having the same discussion. I think a lot of places are, and that's why, you know, things are probably going to change rapidly, just as rapidly as they changed from last week to Monday night. They'll change again from tonight to Monday night, I'm sure. So I think as far as the transfer station hours go, certainly I'd like to have that weekend to look at it. As far as the other piece goes, I think the department heads would like a chance to speak into that in non-public, either Monday night, if that makes sense, or tonight.
That's fine. In the meantime, I want to see how what you're doing fits into this.
So,
Because it's kind of, you kind of got your own plan, and you keep talking about that up there and how that it's coming down. This looks like this is their plan. So, to protect the employee and to help the employee. And you've come up with your own kind of a plan. So which one are we going to follow? Diana, are we going to follow this plan? Or was just some of us going to follow the plan? And that's kind of what I guess I
think
want to find out.
you know, the reason for the meeting Monday night, the discussion was, you know, the emergency leave, which is specified in the personnel plan and the contract.
But we didn't have that then. We didn't have this then.
The new law, sure. We did have emergency leave provisions, which is what I proposed to you Monday night, and you approved. I think we're operating under a different scenario, clearly. There's a new law in place.
The new law in place.
So if we want to talk, you know, again, like we talked about, you know, if we digest that and propose something Monday night or talk about Monday night how that works, then I think that makes sense.
Anybody got any feelings?
I have a feeling, and the feeling is, I think I understand. This all makes all the sense in the world to me. Thank you again, Danielle, for putting this together. But to me, this looks clearly like a reactionary plan. And I think that what Adam is trying to do is a proactive plan. And I think there's a difference between the two that should be discussed.
So that's exactly what my question was, right? So and I'm not talking about carrying on as business as usual, but the same question that I asked on Monday is that, is there things that our departments can do to accommodate space and work and people? And is that are we able to do that in a safe way? Adam said no, that that's not the case for his department. He felt strongly that that was in their best interest and the public's best interest to make a change. Which is why I brought up the question. Is there, now that we've had a minute, because that was within 24 hours, we had to come together to make some pretty rash decisions.
We had that thing of half
Correct.
an hour before we had to look at it.
But we also said
Yeah.
that this is an ongoing, weekly, daily,
A revolving,
whatever
constantly
changes.
moving.
So that's why I asked the question again, is to say, is this we need time to plan it out, we need accommodations, because if that's the case, and I think to Barbara Griffin's point is that if that's what we're gonna do, it should be across the board, and that's essentially what, we're talking about. So that's why I'm asking directly, is that impacting our ability to work? Is it you're worried about exposure to the public, employees' exposure to one another? Like, I guess I don't get it, right? Because if that's the case for you, then it would most certainly be the case for the library and town hall. And your
I agree.
opinion might be that that's where you think we should be, but that's not what,
That's not what we've
agreed upon.
adopted, that's not what we've gone with other departments, this was yours, so, your department, you took that lead.
So I hear what
And
you're
I can
saying,
understand what you're saying.
and that's why I'm asking, the question is, can we, justify that, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to go to the taxpayer and say, we made this decision, we are 100% certain that they can't work in any kind of capacity or be in those close proximity, whatever. I don't care what it is, I just need some sort of something to be able to back that up. I'm not saying I won't, I'm saying I need a good reason to do it.
Carlos, you were gonna say something.
And I think that's exactly what we're doing here. I mean, it's nice to say that we'd like consistency across all departments, but it's not the same across all departments. The services that they provide are different, sometimes significantly different. Their interactions with the public are different, sometimes significantly different. Yes, if we can get consistency in so much as possible, but I think that's a pretty high bar to clear. And I think we're approaching it properly. We're asking for the department heads individually to come up with their recommendations, and I think there've been some great ones that have come forward, including DPW and all of the others. So, I mean, I think we're doing the best we can. We're meeting every week to revisit this on a weekly basis, and it's gonna change next week, just as we know it did change this week.
I mean, as they extend the forecast, or as the forecast gets, put out to the public, start talking about 18 months. Is there any, conception of mine that this could go on for very long? No. I mean, initially, Monday night, that was the day after the school decision was made, that the state guidance was, hey, we need the kids out of school for 3 weeks. Okay, if it's good enough for the state with the limited information we're getting from the governor at that point about what kind of guidance about stay home from work type stuff, if it's good enough for the school, okay, let's take a look. The thought was we reevaluate after that April 3rd date, and maybe it makes sense. That 3 weeks, I think, on the behalf of schools was in order to flatten the curve. At least you've cut down transmission rates for 3 weeks. I think that's a rational thing to do, and if that's the window that we reevaluate and say, okay, we've knocked it in the teeth here for the first few weeks, and maybe it's time to start a different rotational plan. But right now, the plan is cycling through people weekly. So one crew would be on for the week, we'll cycle off, and then they'll cycle back in. So that was the plan. If April 3rd is too far to continue on, I understand it's a big deal, and it's all changing every single day. So there we go.
Okay, and Carlos, did you have?
But specifically to the issue of the transfer station being open this Saturday, I think it's a good recommendation. I think we ought to do that and see what happens.
Can you get us a number for Saturday, how many people go through the gate?
I can try.
Okay, I mean, just to give us an idea for Monday night.
Sometimes
Just-
it's, the 2 or 3 times
yeah.
kind of thing, but yeah, we'll get a
It's
cross.
gonna be hard to tell doing it that
I
way,
understand,
but.
but, I mean, it'll give us some,
And when it went out originally, that it was gonna be closed too, so.
Well,
And-
it's some
Yeah.
data. It's some
Yeah.
data for us to contemplate.
yeah, we could make a decision on that, and, I mean,
I think that-
Did anybody say what the decision was? There were no minutes online as to what the decision was.
We adopted, I'll tell you what we had voted on. It was given to us as a recommended actions.
Non-public.
Yeah, this-
DPW continuity of operations. was given to us, and we looked at it, and like I said, we got it, and like at 5:30, we really never really got a chance to go over it, so we adopted it at that time.
And it was done in non-public.
No, it was not done enough.
There was a vote taken in public
Right.
to adopt recommendations from the department head. It included emergency leave for a portion of the DPW workers until reevaluated on April 3rd. Again, those minutes have not been finalized yet because I haven't had the time to do them, and we have 5 days to finalize those public meetings. But that was the vote taken on, and I can work to get those up online
Yeah, those
tomorrow.
minutes haven't been approved.
So we have one department out on emergency leave.
No, we have some employees of one department.
Is that what it
At
is?
least
Yes.
one, I don't know about others, but.
Okay.
The whole department's not out. He's got half a crew working and half a crew not working, or some of one unit and some of not unit, so, you know, and like I said, the discussion will continue on, I think, on Monday night. Anything else? You made a motion?
I did, motion to adjourn.
Yep, second.
So motion by Chet, seconded by member,
Yeah, thank you.
seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none.
Thank you.
No non-public?
No.
No.
I can't remember what happened.